Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics. In this video, I like to discuss the latest nonsense that Boris Johnson is spouting to justify his failure to manage new coronavirus variants, and the news that the Oxford vaccine in widespread use in the UK may only be providing 10% protection against the South African variant now active in the UK. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So, in pretty bad news for a lot of countries, including the UK, around the world, South Africa has been conducting tests on the efficacy of various vaccines on the variants that developed there, which is resistance to the vaccines so far in use. The news suggests that the Oxford-produced AstraZeneca vaccine may only provide 10% protection, though this is believed to be for mild to moderate COVID. Protection against the more severe forms of the illness, which lead to hospitalisation, are believed to be higher. Now, this is in the early days, of course, and percentage efficacies, of course, will be revised with further studies. But what it highlights is a particular problem. The AstraZeneca vaccine was actually considered to be very good. We have different vaccines. This one was considered very useful because, and it has been used in South Africa. They've now suspended its use because of this. The huge benefit of this Oxford-based vaccine is it's cheap to produce and also really easy to distribute. If you recall the Pfizer vaccine, which is the first one to become available in the UK, that needs to be stored at, what was it, minus 70 degrees? I think it was between minus 70 and minus 80 degrees Celsius, if I remember correctly. That's not the case here. So if you have a vaccine that's really easy to use and inexpensive to produce, it's pretty bad news for the global campaign against coronavirus. Remember, that is paramount. No one beats this pandemic until the whole world beats it. And that's pretty bad news for this campaign if that vaccine is much less effective against a new variant. But what does it mean for the UK specifically? So, two ways to look at it. And at first glance, you look at both these things and you might think that these are saving graces, but actually they could both be really bad. So the first thing to note, so a junior government minister yesterday, doing the rounds on the interviews, downplayed the issue by noting that the South African variant is not the dominant form in the UK. There's only a relatively small number of cases identified. I think it's like 140 something, or it was at the time. Absolutely. But here's the thing. What is the dominant form of coronavirus in the UK? It is the new, more transmissible variant which emerged in the south of England last autumn. Now, back then, there were only isolated cases of it as well. Now, it is the most dominant variant because it's so much more transmissible, and it's not as impacted by our lockdown measures. It looks like it has been affected by the third lockdown. It wasn't affected at all by the second. It carried on growing during the second, but the third, yes. But it's not been hammered as quickly as you might expect as the previous form. Now, given that we've identified a new variant in the UK that combines the extra transmissibility of our variant and the South African mutation as well, I'd say that doesn't bode well for this spring, when lockdown's removed, maybe in March, or at least eased. I'm not saying it'll just be straight away removed, but eased. It could easily become the most dominant variant. The second factor, is, as I say, so its effectiveness against the more severe forms of the illness is higher than for mild or moderate forms, but it's still less effective than it would be against previous forms, the ones that aren't vaccine resistant. And it might sound like it's a saving grace still because, where you get the least effectiveness is people with mild or moderate symptoms. They're the ones who are, get the bad cough but don't ultimately need hospital. But here's the thing. It's the people with the mild or the moderate forms of the disease who are out and about transmitting it to others. I mean, sure, I know what you'll be saying. Anyone with symptoms of COVID, even mild symptoms should not be. You develop symptoms, just anything at all, you get a test, you isolate while you wait for the results. If you test positive, you remain in isolation. But this is not what's happening. Fewer than 1 in 5 people who develop symptoms are believed to be following the rules on this. Now, partly this will be because the government are not providing financial support. They say they are, but they're not. So someone living hand to mouth and who would be facing bills that they cannot pay if they take time off work, and even when they go back to work, they don't earn anything extra to make up for it, they're not going to be inclined to take the test. They'll just fool themselves that it's just something, oh, it's just a cough. I do get coughs from time to time. And there are those who will have the test, possibly for peace of mind, I don't know, test positive, and then go out anyway, whether for shopping or work or both. And all of this behaviour will continue. So you can consider a future, possibly next autumn. You know, summer is over, the conditions that allow a virus, any virus, to flourish suddenly reappear. The bulk of the willing population has been vaccinated by then, let's say. I don't know what proportion that would be, but more resistant variants, you know, because many more will appear, are then the dominant forms. New vaccines are being worked on, of course, all the time. It's very much like flu. You get new strains emerging, you develop new vaccines to tackle them, but they take time. And again, and this minister, I think it was this, might have been a different minister, but a government minister was also talking about the fact that, you know, very much like flu, you know, we have to keep having, you know, we're likely to have vaccinations every year. The thing is with flu, it's not everyone though, is it? It's vulnerable people and frontline healthcare workers. But, you know, when the population is largely vaccinated with the earlier versions that are not as effective against what might, at this point, thinking forward to next autumn, may be the dominant forms. People are still going out and about. They're still developing COVID because the vaccine is not protecting as well as those forms. It'll be better than nothing. I'm not saying that the new wave at this point will be as bad as our second wave, because with the second wave, we didn't even have the vaccine. But it will still emerge. And what will the government do then? Give false hope about talk of yet another vaccine? Oh, I know I said the vaccine would take us out of this. What we meant is this new vaccine will do it, and then another and another, because new variants keep emerging. So what is to be done? I mean, it's quite clear. Coronavirus is widespread in the UK. We let it get massively out of hand. We've had a lockdown in place for 5 weeks now, and the number of new cases per day is coming down very swiftly. I've been very heartened by the fact it doesn't seem to have tailed off at all yet, but it is still very high. But what's causing the major headaches now is that we have a vaccination program underway, and we've got two issues. One, people spreading misinformation to dissuade people from accepting the vaccinations. This is a problem that the government needs to grasp, and I've not seen any signs of an effective campaigning operation. I will say, however, at least our mainstream media are not causing trouble in this area. They seem to be universally supporting the message about getting the vaccination, the only useful thing they've done for years. 2, new variants entering the country. Sure, we're more than capable of developing our own. In fact, we have done, but it's not helped when we import them. Again, it's about the only thing we are importing at the moment, new forms of coronavirus. And it's this second one that the government really could relatively easily stamp out. You know, we're still not restricting access into the country. You know, in theory, negative tests are required for a lot of people entering. That's what the rules say. But in reality, the systems in place to check them are not effective. There's lots of people coming in and they're not being checked. In addition, quarantining is not universal. I talked yesterday about how Boris Johnson lied, saying that his scientific advisors never advised universal quarantining when they did. But yesterday he was saying, when he was asked a question about combating new variants, how are we stopping new variants getting into the country? Don't you think we should tighten our border controls? And he said 2 things. He said that we have amongst the toughest border controls in the world. We do not. But he also said that the border controls are most effective when you've got the rate of infection down. But he was being asked about stopping new variants coming into the country. On the issue of new variants, by definition, the rate of infection is currently 0. Until it's in the country, the rate of infection of that variant is 0. So his argument makes no sense. By his own logic, he's saying tighter border controls are more effective when you've got a low rate of infection. You can't get lower than 0. So we should have tighter border controls because our rate of infection on another new vaccine-resistant variant, which may be sneaking around somewhere in the world right now, is 0. But it won't remain 0 if we just let it waltz past border control. And his response was typical, because you notice how he did it. First of all, he says that our border restrictions are really tight. World beating, he might well have said. This is the lie that he hopes fools most people. So he starts off with the first lie to say, actually, we are doing everything possible, which is not true. But then there'll be people who know full well that our controls are a joke because they'll have experienced them. So he tries another tack for those people by claiming that actually they're not that effective. You might think they're effective, but and in some countries maybe they are, but for our particular situation it wouldn't actually work. And that's the classic thing he tried last year as well. And you know, sure, if there was only one form of coronavirus in the world, if there weren't new strains, new variants, it would be a case of shutting the stable door after the horse has bolted. This idea of putting in border controls a full year after they should have done. But we're talking about new forms that are not yet in the country, or at least as far as we know, but bloody soon will be. So yeah, we can't say anything for certain, of course, but we can absolutely be setting up the conditions for next autumn to usher in a new wave of variants resistant to the vaccines that we're using right now. And even, let's say, because yeah, we will carry on developing new vaccines, let's say a more effective vaccine against these new variants is even available at the time, not just that it's in development, let's say it's even available at that time. That doesn't solve the problem because you can't distribute it to the entire population overnight. You know, at the moment, we're rolling out the vaccine very well thanks to the NHS's expertise in such matters, but it's still taking months. Best case scenario is it's going to take over half a year to get everyone done, then we have to start again. So what would happen under those conditions is more restrictions would have to come in again. And when I say more restrictions, what I mean is more lockdowns. Because I see nothing to suggest that this government is actually learning any lessons or even taking the situation more seriously than it did last year when Boris Johnson said we should just ignore it, let it sweep through the country, take it on the chin. You know, they're cock-a-hoop at the moment. They can do no wrong because they're getting really good press coverage over the speedy rollout of the vaccines. But that's because they gave the job to the experts, the NHS. Really, they should be being attacked for the suitability, the rollout of the vaccine, because they should be saying, this is what happens when you give it to the NHS instead of like pest controllers or t-shirt salesmen. And then the government should be asked, so when are you going to give test and trace to the NHS as well so that that can work properly? But there we go. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. If you'd like to support the channel further, please click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.